Oh. Oh, look at him go. Oh, wow. Yeah. Folks, that's the energy you're going to get.
Welcome to the stream. So let's get right into it. We are going to start with Zack Snyder's Justice League.
We're going to get the big one out of the way.
Yeah, because we've got thoughts, we've got feelings, and I'm excited to talk about it.
So where do you want to begin with this behemoth? This movie is 4 hours long, and it's divvied up into 6 parts. Mm-hmm. So for us, what we did was we watched the first 3 parts, right? 3 or 4?
Yeah, we watched the first 3. We watched the prologue and the first 3 parts.
Yeah, and then we stopped it because it had been 2 hours, and then we watched the rest of it the next day. Mm-hmm. And that was an interesting experience because we were talking about it after we finished it all, and I was like, if this had been like a part 1, part 2 movie, kind of like Harry Potter, Twilight, how they ended, it would have been a very boring first movie and then a very packed second movie. I don't know. If you have 4 hours to kill and you're okay with sitting and watching a movie for 4 hours, knowing that there are places where you can pause it, like there are natural breaks in the story, then I would probably recommend watching it all at once. It's a lot to take in, but I feel like that's the best way to get the most complete picture. But if you do split it up, try to watch them as close together as possible. Like, don't watch unless you really want to like build up your anticipation for it. I wouldn't watch them like one part at a time, spread out over like 6 weeks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like even watch the first half and then watch the second half a month later.
Yeah.
There's just so much.
Yeah.
That like it's very easy to miss things or forget that things happened because so much is happening. That's kind of where I was at before we even started. We watched Justice League together not that long ago, like a few months ago. I don't remember most of it.
Yeah.
It was so jam-packed full of stuff that like it's impossible for me to remember.
And that was in a 2-hour movie.
Right. Unless I rewatched it, which I didn't want to do because it wasn't very good. Yeah. It was okay, but it wasn't good enough for me to want to rewatch it to commit it to memory. So I don't know. That's just my suggestion. If you were curious about how we watched it or how I would recommend you watch it, try to get it out of the way altogether as quickly as you can. Otherwise, I feel like you'll forget what happened in the previous part.
That's interesting. I kind of preferred watching it. We split it into 2 days, like Kendra said. I kind of preferred it that way only because like sitting through 4 hours of a movie is a very big ask. If this would have come out in theaters as is,
there would have had to be an intermission.
Yeah, that's a lot. And I remember there was even moments as we were watching it where we kind of paused for like a little, bathroom break or things like that. Just because there's a lot happening in this, as I called it, a superhero opera, if you will.
God.
Here's what like my official like very, very brief review of it is. Zack Snyder's Justice League is an overall much more cohesive story with richer character development and vastly improved action set pieces. Even if it is at times a little pretentious and overindulgent, it's an enjoyable superhero opera. Now, when I say superhero opera, it's 1, the length, but 2, you really get a good glimpse into what Zack Snyder wanted to do with this movie and with these characters. So yeah, the length is one thing. If you guys are able to tough it out and do 4 hours straight, by all means. I kind of enjoyed breaking it up just because I was always one of those people who wanted it to be released as a miniseries, but we can talk about that a little later. So it is no secret that I am very critical of Zack Snyder as a filmmaker, not as a human person. And I was not really looking forward to this movie. I've talked about it on stream. I've alluded to it on the other platforms. I was surprised that I actually enjoyed this movie. I was very, very, very pleasantly surprised because I was worried that I myself was going to approach it. I didn't want to like hate watch it. I try not to approach anything that way, but I was worried that I was gonna like not be able to control like those negative expectations. But no, I wound up being pleasantly surprised at how much more I enjoyed it than I was anticipating, which was I was anticipating on hating it. So yeah, that was kind of my initial reaction to it. I was like, I like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not like a diehard DC fan at all. I only watched all of these recent movies because you made me. Not made me, but because you wanted to. And I was like, might as well. Like I said before, I didn't hate the original. I didn't think it was good. I didn't think it was unenjoyable. It wasn't like I was sitting there waiting for it to be over. And part of that was me like kind of finding enjoyment in things that perhaps weren't meant to be comedic. Like in that one scene where they're all together on Batman's like ship thing, in the background in the original like theatrical Justice League, it looked like a video game background. Like it looked like a Windows PC screensaver background.
Yeah.
Disgusting.
Bitch, disgusting.
I thought that was hilarious. So that whole scene, I'm just looking at this background being like, that's insane. But I don't think that was perhaps the filmmaker's intent for me to enjoy that part of it in particular. So like I was fine to enjoy where I could find it in that first movie.
Well, I remember when we watched the theatrical cut, like it was a movie. It's a movie that exists. I kind of describe it as just like a shell of a movie, because you don't really feel for any of the characters that like were introduced, and you barely feel for the characters who have been. Just because the theatrical cut, is just all over the place. Comparatively speaking, though, we got a lot more from this Snyder Cut, which is, the trajectory behind it is insane. in my opinion just amazing. By now you guys probably, and if you're watching this you probably already know, but a very 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 brief watered down version of its trajectory. Joss Whedon took over Justice League in May of 2017, as the film's release date was in November of 2017, so they had like not a lot of time to do all these reshoots and do all these things, and it then that was that. I guess Zack Snyder had always had this rough 4-hour cut of Justice League, of all the footage he shot and whatnot. Then Jason Momoa went on Twitter and was like, hey, I saw the Snyder Cut, making all the fans believe like, oh my God, it exists. Yeah. Then the stars started like campaigning for it. The fans campaigned for it. There were billboards. It was all over the place. And then WB finally caved in and was like, hey, we're going to do this. They wanted to release it as is, no additional VFX. Like, we're going to put it out how we want to put it out. And he said, no, you guys don't even have to pay me. Just put the money straight into the effects and let us finish the shots and whatever. And now it is officially on HBO Max for everyone's enjoying needs.
I want to say something really quickly, because this is something that I didn't understand, because I heard Joss Whedon took what was mostly finished for Justice League, added some of his own shots,
added a lot of his own shots,
and then like fucked it up, not fucked it up and like oh, it's gross, everyone hates it, just deviated from the original plan, and then that's what was released. And then I'm not done. And then Zack Snyder came back, and I assumed he had shot like all new stuff. It wasn't until you explained it to me that he shot like 15 minutes of new stuff, like reshoots.
So Joss Whedon came in, shot a bunch of new shit, and then both he and various big suits at WB kind of muddled it and edited it up until this weird thing of a movie that they're just like, well, we gotta put it out. Let's put it out. Recently, a WB exec admitted that everyone there thought it was a, quote, piece of shit. The theatrical cut, Right. Zack Snyder came back and filmed, I kid you not, about 4 minutes worth of new footage.
Yeah. See, for people like me, I hear about these things and then I don't care enough to follow up on them. So when I hear that, oh, they're releasing Zack Snyder's Justice League, I'm thinking like, oh, like he reshot like half the film. That's what I assumed. So when you told me it was 4 minutes, I was like, and then while we were watching it, I was like, will we see Superman's like CG mustache? And you said no, because that was reshoots that Joss Whedon did. So I was like, oh, like he's only using like his I didn't realize, I think this is what it boils down to, I didn't realize how much of the movie Zack Snyder had filmed in his own vision before Joss Whedon got it. Because if you have 4 hours, well, 3 hours and 56 minutes worth of content, that's insane to me. Like that's so much. I don't know. So just to put it in perspective, it was almost done. And then Joss Whedon had to step in. Yeah, it's just insane to me that things can go so wrong so quickly.
So with Zack Snyder, I'm always hesitant to say something is almost done, because apparently this man wanted to do everything in this movie. But they were basically done, but the studio just wasn't happy with the direction. Yeah, it was just a very, very strange thing to do with a movie that completed.
Yeah, it's almost like, especially the circumstances in which Zack Snyder had to drop out of that film, it's kind of disrespectful.
Yeah, and that's why he left. The rumor goes that they were planning on firing him. So when they wanted to bring in Joss Whedon,
Zack Snyder.
Yeah, Zack Snyder. He didn't have the energy to fight against it.
Yeah.
And that wound up being what it was. But like I said, we got this new original grand vision that Zack Snyder had. And like I said, I wound up enjoying it far more than I thought I would.
Me too.
I will say it's not free of its own issues. While all the footage is mostly stuff we haven't seen, it's still the same general story. And, you know, we still get some of that like kind of clunky, dare I say cheesy dialogue between various characters. We get a little weird CGI in there, but I think it's because overall the movie is a little over-reliant on CGI. I don't think there's enough usage of both practical and CGI. I think a lot of it is just CGI. And it looks weird to me.
I didn't notice anything in particular, but also I usually don't until after the fact someone's like, oh, look at this.
Yeah, well, I mean,
like, oh, okay.
So when I say I think it looks weird, I think over-reliant is more accurate. It's just, it takes it so much out of the ground of reality, which, I mean, they're fighting aliens and
right.
So like I understand it's not like supposed to be like realistic, but it's also like some of those same stakes aren't there. Like when you have a movie, I'm sorry, I'm going to do this a lot. When you have a movie like Avengers and they're fighting the Chitauri, you know, you get some of those shots of them, like of either Cap fighting 3 or 4 of them while he's on top of a car, or, you know, Nat is like doing her thing. It feels a little more like there are more stakes in which they're fighting. So I think that's more what I mean. Yeah,
part of that for me is just that none of them, maybe with the exception of Batman and Wonder Woman, they're not like fighters.
Yeah.
Like Cyborg has a big old gun arm that he go pew pew with. Flash, I only wanted to say Ezra Miller. I'm not wrong, but I'm not right. Yeah. He like, not just, because I mean, specifically the Flash stuff was very cool, I will say, in this movie. But he runs and like fucks with time and stuff like that. None of them are really like hand-to-hand combating. Yeah. So I think that's kind of, for me, where it's like, it doesn't feel as weighty. Yeah. Because there's not like a lot of one-on-one like brawling. Yeah. But I mean...
I agree. And also with this movie, there are a ton of like various storylines and characters that were introduced, but never, we're saving the one you're thinking of for the very end. So I know the one you're thinking of. Okay. We can mention it here, but we're going to talk about it later. So, like, we got the scene with Iris West, saw Lois Lane's pregnancy test. We were introduced to a member of the Justice League that was kind of there.
Didn't need to be there.
Didn't need to be there.
And it makes more sense because, again, I didn't know. You told me that there was this, like, grand plan. Most of Zack Snyder's, like, creative vision, grand plans. Who knows what's coming to fruition or not. But I didn't realize that this was supposed to be like a trilogy. Well, didn't he? I saw a quote and it might have been fake. Didn't he say 5-part trilogy? Which doesn't make any sense.
I did not see that, but
I might have been making that up.
I would like to think he's smarter than that.
I would assume a filmmaker would understand that.
Before we get too deep into anything that I know you want to get into.
Yeah.
Because like I said, we're going to save that for the end. Okay. So for me, the Iris West scene, this entire sequence did not need to be even in this version of the movie.
Yeah, here's the thing. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, I was gonna say I wasn't done with my piece.
I just wanted to get out there first that I didn't like hate this scene, especially like the stuff with him getting a job and like playing with puppies and stuff. But yeah, I agree with you. It's like, did this need to be
Okay,
here?
So I will say I loved the moments between Barry and Iris. The circumstances in which Barry has to save her is what I hated about the scene. Yeah. Where it's this truck driver. And we're talking spoilers this entire thing, y'all. I'm sorry we didn't say it sooner.
Hold on one second.
This scene in which this truck driver is fucking munching down on a big old burger and drops it and is driving and is spending the entire time in this massive truck trying to get this burger.
Yeah.
Iris doesn't put on her seatbelt and drives and is looking at Barry the whole time, not looking at the road. It's like, and then that scene of him like almost almost touching the burger right in the camera. Yeah. To me, I'm like, this is so stupid.
Yeah, and I think it was supposed to be like, I hope, like funny. That whole scene, because there's that whole part of Barry like grabbing a wiener out of the air. I think it was supposed to be like funny, a funny meet cute.
I think it's Zack Snyder's idea of a meet cute where like someone almost fucking dies.
But there's the thing. It's like, we know she's going to be okay because... Not for nothing, we saw it in the trailer, right? But, like, that's a very serious situation.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would make light of it by being like, yeah, sometimes people don't wear seatbelts and sometimes people grab... Like, I don't know. It just felt like, I don't know, people, like, real people have died because of things like this. So it just seemed like almost... I don't know. I don't know if I'm reading too much into it, but it's just...
No.
Stupid.
The circumstances...
Like, it could have been anything. Like, a text message is... Like
Yeah.
a burger on the floor. Sorry, if a burger touched a truck floor, I'm not even gonna bother to pick it up.
No.
It's gone. It's dead to me.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna eat it.
Yeah, I'm like,
It's not worth it.
yeah, I just thought that entire sequence was pretty silly.
Yeah. And I thought it looked cool, her flipping through the air and like him like it looked cool. It's very unrealistic that someone who is in a crash would look like a supermodel the entire time. Like you mentioned, the one thing that really chapped my ass. No seatbelt.
Yeah.
No seatbelt. How?
It's the first rule of driving. It's the first thing they
rule.
teach you.
Everyone, make sure you wear your seatbelt because you never know when a trucker's grabbing for a sandwich and you might T-bone them because also you're not paying attention because there's a cute boy over to your left. Yeah. And like you were saying, part of it's like, does that need to be there? I understand that there's a Flash movie coming out, so I assume that's why we got that, because she'll be in the Flash movie.
Well, this scene was supposed to be she was cast for this movie. It was already supposed to be there.
Yeah.
But this is one of the few examples, well, not few examples. This is one of the examples that I'm like, I can understand why this was cut out of the movie.
Yeah.
Because it's never revisited in this movie.
Yeah, she never comes back.
Yeah, it'd be different if like there was another scene within this 4-hour movie. Even if it's like she's at like a Central City hospital or police station, they're like, explain to me again what you saw. Like even in a post-credit scene, like setting up the Flash movie, like something extra would have made more sense. But because there wasn't that, it just felt like this weird, like you said, Zack Snyder version of a meet cute in which
that never resolves.
That never,
anything.
It's never visited again.
For people who maybe don't know that there's plans for a Flash movie, this is the only one that they've seen. They're just like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah, and unless you're familiar with either the comics or the show, you're not gonna know because they never say Iris West.
I had no clue.
It says in the credits.
You told me. Otherwise, I'd just be like, okay, that was weird. Maybe I don't know, because it's like, was it them being like, oh, these are his powers? Did we see him use his powers before then? I don't think so.
No, the only thing we saw was that little clip of him in the convenience store.
Right.
In the gas station footage or whatever.
Yeah. I don't know. I just wish it wasn't, because again, cool shots came out of that, like him turning and his shoes just disintegrating. Yeah. That was a cool shot.
Yeah. Well, so Zack Snyder loves his slow-mo. It's all over this movie, and it's in all of his movies. He loves his slow motion shots. The thing is, with the Flash, I think are the best times to use it because it makes the most sense there. So yeah, when you see him like run and everything else is super slow around him, it's like, it's kind of cool. And sometimes the shots are even beautiful, I'll say.
Yeah, I will say there were a lot of gratuitous shots in this movie. That's part of the reason why it was so long. Yeah. There were so many gratuitous shots adding nothing to the story. Yeah. They looked beautiful. Yeah. So it's like I can't dislike them completely because they are pretty, but they added nothing to the movie. Yeah, but I'll give the movie credit where I can as we go.
Yeah, like that. What's his name? Aquaman shot
of him just like walking
brooding.
Out. Yeah, drinking
whiskey,
getting swallowed by the waves. Beautiful. It didn't need to be there.
The shot's beautiful. The man's beautiful.
4-minute long. Yeah. Him walking.
It was like a music video shot, and it's like weird. It's because this movie wants it like it wants to be like this big blockbuster epic, but it also wants to be like almost like an avant-garde like art movie. But anyway, yeah, I didn't really care for the Iris West thing. Love the casting. I love the moments they had together that they did share. I just think the scene itself was kind of dumb. I wish it wasn't there.
They either needed to tweak that scene to like maybe be a completely different person. So I don't know. Something about like that being an important character that we never follow up on. Yeah. Either make it not an important character or follow up on it in this movie. Yeah. So we know that this person is important and will pop up again.
Like we briefly mentioned before, the Lois Lane pregnancy test. I was a little confused about this because I don't know that they ever specified the time frame in which this movie takes place. I always assumed that it was like a full year after, because I know that Suicide Squad was meant to be a good amount of time after the events of Batman vs Superman. After that is Suicide Squad, so Superman's been dead a while. Yeah. So like
that was one of the things that I brought up as we were watching it. I was like, how long has it been?
Yeah, and we don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it would be like a month. Maybe, unless she's just like not had her period for 6 months and she's like, I should probably find out.
But even if the Lois Lane stuff was meant to take place before, there was no indication of that. So how would we as the audience know?
And again, never followed up on.
Yeah, well, okay, so that goes into the planned grand vision. Apparently they were going to do some storyline. I think this movie really kind of benefits and suffers from what's been established in the DCEU before it. It's important to note before I go any further, Zack Snyder's Justice League is not canon in the DCEU. So we are just seeing his grand vision for this movie and whatever else he wanted to do. That said, I think it both benefits from and suffers from what's been established before it. So with Lois Lane, I know he wanted to do this storyline where she was pregnant with Clark's kid, and originally back in the day when DC announced their film slate, they were going to do Justice League Part 1 and Part 2. All of a sudden recently, Zack Snyder said he wanted to do a trilogy. This is the first time I'm ever hearing about a trilogy, so that's not to say that he didn't have the idea, but it's awful convenient. It's really random. It doesn't really come into play ever again with the pregnancy test.
Yeah.
But anyway, going back into why this movie I think benefits and suffers from what's come before it. So before the Snyder Cut, we have gotten 2 Wonder Woman movies, an Aquaman movie, and of course 2017's Justice League.
You're saying like in real time we've gotten these movies.
Yes.
Yeah, because that was something you also had to explain to me, because when I was watching it, I didn't realize that at the time Aquaman hadn't come out. Mm-hmm. So it's just it's like going back in time to be like, oh, like this is here. Yeah.
So we have the benefit of having these movies, so we kind of have spent more time with these characters. And if you're a fan of the DCEU, you care about these characters more. You have a little bit more of a established relationship with them. Mm-hmm. What this movie was meant to do, though, was set up a Cyborg franchise, a Flash franchise, an Aquaman franchise, and, of course, a Justice League franchise, while telling its own story and setting up, this big bad.
Yeah.
So this movie did have a very, very, very large task ahead of it. And I think that's part of why people were like concerned about what it was becoming. I personally think this movie still could have been maybe an hour shorter. And still gotten the same point across. But I understand why it was the way that it was. But yeah, I don't know.
I think that is incredibly indicative of the problems that DC EU movies face. And sorry, because we're going to keep coming back to Marvel, because Marvel is the example of doing it correctly and successfully. That's why they are what they are now.
Yeah.
DC movies, we saw it in Suicide Squad. We saw it a little bit in Birds of Prey. We saw it in the original Justice League. You try to cram introductions into the main movie. With Marvel, we got how many movies before the first Avengers movie where most of these characters were already introduced?
Yeah.
Like the way that Black Widow was introduced in Iron Man 2 before being in the Avengers movie.
Made sense.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. You got time to understand her, care about her as a character, and you know like her powers and abilities, where she stands with who and whatever. Ooh, sorry. And even like a little bit of her backstory. Mm-hmm. With the DC movies, it's like they're trying so hard to shove it all into one, so they don't have to do all of the prerequisite work.
Yeah.
And that's why they struggle so much. That's why this movie is 4 hours long and confusing.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to introduce so much all at once.
I will say this movie is not nearly as confused. Like if anyone feels any semblance of confusion going into the Snyder, like after watching the Snyder Cut, imagine having even less answers with the theatrical cut. But overall, I think that's the problem with these like director's cuts of specifically Batman vs Superman and Justice League, is that a good streamlined movie doesn't need to have 3 and or 4 hours to tell a story. There was a rumor a year or two ago. It's just now coming back after, hot on the tail of the Snyder Cut. Someone was like, the first cut of Black Panther was 4 hours long. And I'm like, okay, here's the thing. One, I don't know that that's true. It might be. Most movies ever made have several hours of footage.
Yeah, you take it from here and you whittle it down to this.
Yeah,
that's how it all works.
Yeah,
we do that with YouTube videos. Like, that's how it works.
Yeah, and not every, there are some times, whether it be the Snyder Cut, whether it be, 2002's Daredevil, no matter what it is, like, sometimes those director's cuts do help the movie. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, you kind of, like you said, you whittle it down into something that's both palatable, makes the most sense, just kind of this, seamless transition into a theatrical release. So yeah, if we're taking the movie as it is, the 4-hour runtime, we as much as any of us may have liked it, you have to take into consideration the runtime, and that means it's got pacing problems.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Like, if you have 4 hours to tell a story, most of the time it's going to be more fleshed out and include more context and backstory and all that stuff. Nobody's arguing that. It's the fact that you shouldn't need that long to tell one story.
I will tag on to that. I'm going to yes and that. I would go as far as to say is if you have a 4-hour film, no one should be leaving that film having any questions.
Right. You should explain everything.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just.
But anyway, so those are obviously some of the issues with the movie. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure we'll revisit some of those little minor things that may have taken away or deviated from how much we enjoyed it. But let's talk about some stuff we did enjoy. I, for one, enjoyed many of these action sequences. Starting with the Wonder Woman bank heist. Yeah. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
We got more of it in this.
Yeah. I'm
still not sold on I'm not that I'm not sold. I'm a little mixed on Wonder Woman having this grand super speed. Mm-hmm. I guess she's supposed to be faster than the common man.
The layman.
But I'm I don't know. I'm always that's kind of Flash's thing.
Speeds, yeah.
Yeah.
Ew.
But I'll be damned if I am not going to admit that seeing her deflect all those bullets.
Well, yeah, she was pop, pop,
yeah, that was
just
pretty cool.
Sliding on her knees, pop, pop,
yeah, I thought that was pretty cool.
So cool. Yeah, a lot of the shots were so cool.
Yeah.
Like I said, I liked a lot of the Flash stuff because we didn't get to see a lot of that in the theatrical cut. Same with Cyborg.
Yeah.
Though I don't think Cyborg got a lot more action sequences. He just got more backstory stuff, which I'll talk about in a second. But as far as the action sequences go, yeah, it was that was, I think, one of the most improved parts of the movie.
And my next one I have written down here was the Themyscira, that sequence with Steppenwolf.
Yeah.
I think all the battles Steppenwolf were in were much better this time, but I think that one in particular was the one I thoroughly enjoyed.
I think that was the longest one because that was the first one.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that one really set the tone for the rest of
yeah.
And it felt like a lot the first in the theatrical run. It felt high stakes because a lot of them died, if I remember correctly. This felt even more high stakes. This felt like they were desperately trying as hard as they could to
and I think this is the one scene in which the added gore and blood made the most sense. Just because it added to that desperation you mentioned. And yeah, I mean, I'm still not a fan of the way Zack Snyder and his team dressed the Amazons. I just think Patty Jenkins really should have been there for at least as a consultant on this one.
One female person.
Yeah,
one woman.
They went from really practical armor and outfitting in Wonder Woman straight into this, and I get that these movies were made at two different times, but but that just kind of shows you the lack of what's the word I'm looking for, communication at Warner Brothers, that they didn't think to be hey,
oh, by the way,
what are you guys doing?
Other movie, which we'll come back to, when we talk about a certain person's accent.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And at least with Marvel, even as recently as Thor and the new Thor and Guardians movies, James Gunn and Taika Waititi have been in communication with each other, reading each other's scripts, making sure that their stories go in the same direction.
Yeah.
Or at least go for their characters, at least. And that's why you see James Gunn as like an executive producer on Endgame and things like, because they all have to have a hand in this. Mm-hmm. And it seems like for a lot of this, they just kind of put it all on Zack Snyder's shoulders, whether or not he was up to that challenge.
Right.
But that's why you have like really inconsistent plot lines throughout all of the movies, not just Justice League.
I have a question.
Yes.
So at Disney, they have Kevin Feige, who like oversees everything. Do they have that for the DCEU movies?
They have tried that to varying degrees of success. I would say more often than not. I think they've gone through a couple of different people.
Yeah.
So I would say no, they don't really have that.
At least not consistently.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why they have a lot of these issues.
Yeah. And that's not to say that like Kevin Feige is, the sole purpose of the MCU success.
No, but
as a producer, like
to have one person there for a long time to oversee the general like big picture of everything, it seems to be incredibly beneficial when you have especially now that they're getting into TV shows. That's a lot of like stories to keep track of.
What he does have a big hand in is delegating like directors and varying producers and other artists to then kind of tell those stories. And he's kind of like the biggest showrunner out there, if you will.
Yeah.
In the TV show that is the MCU. So yeah, they don't really have that. But anyway, outfitting aside, I did really enjoy the Themyscirus battle scene. I just thought it was really, really well done. I liked that it was a little more extended. I wasn't really sure how knocking the whole that whole shrine thing down would be effective, because I remember we were watching it and I was like, wouldn't he just be able to come out the bottom?
Yeah, that was weird. Again, something that visually looked very cool and very beautiful in like a tragic way. But like, again, it's just like they have wings, they fly. Like, did they think that would kill them?
I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe they just didn't know. But also, they were there for the last battle with Darkseid.
Yeah.
So you'd think they'd be like, oh, I remember from last time, they're hard to kill and they fly.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it was a very interesting, just that one little bit.
Yeah.
But
didn't take you out completely though.
Skipping ahead a little bit too, you mentioned Darkseid. I really, really like the Darkseid war scene that they threw in there, because in the movie they took Darkseid wasn't in or mentioned at all.
Yeah.
In the theatrical cut, so it was cool. I thought they were just going to talk a lot about Darkseid in the movie. Mm-hmm. Like, I saw a couple shots of him in the various trailers.
Yeah, we knew we would see him.
But I didn't know we would see him like this.
Yeah. That was an awesome battle.
Yeah.
Zeus and Ares looked a little...
They looked a little cosplay.
A little, not even like... Yeah, I guess cosplay is a good way to say it. They just look like human dudes.
They just look like guys being dudes.
Just guys being dudes. Like, they didn't look like gods, but, I mean... What is a god if not a dude? What is a god if not a guy being a dude?
Yeah, exactly. So, and we got like some cool Green Lantern stuff in there.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool.
I think that was a good way to pepper in something subtly.
Yes.
Being like, oh, we acknowledge that this character
that they exist.
Maybe we'll see that again sometime.
Yeah. That was an effective use of a character, of planting the seeds of a character.
Right.
Because of course we know that the Green Lantern Corps, that's a bunch of different Green Lanterns. Mm-hmm. So that's cool.
Was Seth Rogen a Green Lantern?
Seth Rogen was not the Green Lantern. He was the Green Hornet.
That's what I'm thinking
Ryan Reynolds was the Green Lantern.
Okay. I guess that's a more suitable choice. Sorry, Seth Rogen.
Well, he might disagree, but...
He was CG, right?
His mostly.
Yeah. Okay. I remember a little bit now.
Yeah. But yeah, that because they took that whole scene out and replaced Darkseid with Steppenwolf. Which the only thing I'll say for the Steppenwolf version of that scenelet they put in the theatrical cut is that it made a little more sense as to why they were pissed off at Steppenwolf, because he lost Earth.
Yeah.
But they didn't even mention that in the other movie, so But yeah, I really enjoyed. He looked really cool. I remember saying after we watched it, like, I'm a little mixed on Darkseid as just like not even just his appearance, but just him as a character, because like in the MCU, like, they're big bad because Darkseid would be the big bad of the DCEU. Thanos, I get what they were going for with his design and also his intentions. Like they meant to humanize him a little more because they wanted you to kind of see where he was coming from.
Right.
Like, even though what he was doing was insane, it was genocide, his reasoning, like, to him made sense. And so therefore we were able to look at that and be like, huh, I guess that, like, in essence, it kind of makes sense what you're saying.
Right. It's like, I get where you're coming from. The execution, literally, that's not it.
Yeah. So Darkseid as a character is just like evil and power hungry for the sake of being evil and power hungry.
Yeah.
And it like, and that reflects in his like character design. He's just almost entirely pitch black with these really red eyes. Yeah. He's big and menacing. Like, he looks cool. He looks awesome. And the VFX did a fantastic job with him and Steppenwolf. We'll get to that in just a second. But yeah, just as like overall as a villain, I'm like, it feels kind of shallow.
Yeah, for a big bad,
yeah,
he didn't feel that big bad. Like, I don't know, I felt like the person who was scared of him the most was Steppenwolf, like, which was the lesser big bad.
Yeah.
Because he didn't really have much to do with the actual like conflict that the heroes were facing.
Yeah.
Because they were trying to stop Steph. They were trying to stop Steppenwolf. So it's like, I don't know. He was just like there, but like not there. Like, he was there, but he was like never really there.
Yeah. And that just, again, with the DCEU overall, is that actually even more specific, Zack Snyder, I think he makes movies for not necessarily superhero fans, but for specifically comic book readers. So in a way, these movies are like for gatekeepers, because
you heard it here first, folks.
Because unless you know any of that, if you're watching this for the first time with no idea who any of these characters are, you're gonna feel a little left out or even a little lost. Like,
yeah. I don't know anything about Darkseid. Part of me doesn't want to research any of these characters just so I can be that person who's like, I don't know anything about anything, because that's how I was when I started watching Marvel movies.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about anything.
Yeah.
And then I watched Iron Man. I was like, he was pretty cool. And I was like 12, so it was like the perfect time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I want to keep my DC innocence so I can be the fresh eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know anything about Darkseid. And like I said, it was like a weird big bad who's there but not really there. He added stuff, because I felt in the first one that Steppenwolf was like kind of a little bitch. Like, no offense, full offense, he's an asshole. But like, even his design, he looked just like a scared guy, like, all the time. And it makes a lot more sense for him to be like directly reporting to someone, like trying to make amends to someone.
Yeah.
But so I guess in that way, Darkseid's presence did add something to the movie, some clarity, at least for me, to be like, oh, so that's why he's doing what he's doing. But I don't know, he just wasn't scary enough. I don't know.
Yeah. So speaking of Steppenwolf looking like in the theatrical cut, he looked like a scared guy. In this Snyder cut, I would say he looked like a scary guy. He got a new look. You like how I did that?
Good Lord. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, he got a complete design overhaul.
Fresh fucking duds.
Looked so cool.
I loved his armor.
Yeah.
And how it would just like, he was just standing still and it'd be like, I don't know what it was doing. Was it the wind? I don't know, but.
And I remember watching it and I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is how little I remembered the original version was that I saw a side by side of Steppenwolf from both movies and I'm like,
insane.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Yeah, like I just didn't realize how little he looked before.
It made me appreciate what they did in this new version though. And also we got to spend a hell of a lot more time with him, and like even if we didn't fully get like exactly what he did to be on Darkseid's shit list.
Yeah, like, we never really got that explanation.
But even without that, like, we still got to like not feel for him. Like I never felt bad for him, but you
Right.
can at least feel like that his mission is to make up to Darkseid and to like, you know, you get a little more emotion from him, and it just, I don't know, it served his character well, to be like super subservient to
underling.
Like Darkseid and Darkseid. And he's like, he asked to see Darkseid and they're like, no. And then when he sees him, he's like overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
So like, I think that stuff's cool.
That was another thing that I don't, why was Darkseid there? Did he need to be there?
Well, it's like it's like a chain of command. It's like,
but it's just, I don't know. That was another weird thing. I'm like, who's this middleman? Do we need him?
Yeah. I guess that's what they were going for, was what you mentioned, is like it would bring more weight to, you know, him actually talking to Darkseid.
Yeah, that makes sense.
At least that's how I was taking it.
That makes sense.
I think overall the Darkseid stuff was cool setup, but I just think that's his issue as a villain overall, is it's just kind of hollow. At least with I liked all the Steppenwolf stuff in this version. Let's talk about the heroes a little bit. Let's talk about a few more things we liked.
Sure.
You mentioned before, we got a much more expanded backstory for Cyborg,
which is well earned.
Yes, and
can I say something as an African American?
Yeah.
It was just really refreshing, and I mean, it's sad and devastating because we were like halfway through it, and I was like, man, I'm really upset that because of actions on who was it? It was like, I don't know, like the studio people.
Mm-hmm.
I think Joss Whedon was part of it though.
Yeah.
And
Joss
then,
Whedon was who was directly involved in it.
Yeah, and then somebody else, another person.
There's several people. Jeff Johns, Walter Hamada were all like.
But they fucked up us having Cyborg in the Flash movie.
Yeah, specifically Ray Fisher as Cyborg.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's just like, it's just sad that it's like they cost that for us and for him, because, but it makes me feel a little bit better that Cyborg was given so much more in this movie. Like, we were able to see what Ray Fisher could do, first of all, and we got more context to his character.
Yeah.
And when you're the one black superhero in the whole team, like, to not have that is very rude.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that we got more. He makes more sense now. Like, when the first theatrical cut, he was like, I'm a monster because I'm part robot or whatever. Sure. But now it's like, I'm a monster because, like, I watched my mom die. I died.
I should be dead.
I'm now full cyborg, which is
Yeah.
because before he wasn't fully mechanical. And then we get to see the conflict that he had with his dad a little bit more.
His dad had a whole ass story arc in this that he didn't have before.
Not at all. And in the end, he watched his only other parent die.
Yeah. A cool little detail they threw in there is that it's like a blink and you miss it kind of detail, is when the car hits them that kills his mom. He reaches his arm out, and when just before his dad sacrifices himself, he reaches that same arm out to, like, I was like, damn, fuck me up. But yeah, I can fully see and appreciate that the goal with Cyborg's character in this was really to make him kind of like the heart of the movie.
Yeah.
I think it was super effective.
100%.
Yeah. So I'm also a little sad that we're not going to see him really. I mean, unless something major changes, we're probably not going to see him. There's a few people we're probably not going to see anymore, and we'll get to that in just a minute.
But yeah, I want to give Zack Snyder his credit, because I think that was one of the best things in the extended version, was just seeing so much more of Cyborg.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And he was one of those characters that, like, I wasn't sure how so overall in all three of his movies, even Man of Steel, like, everything's just like brooding the entire time. Even a more fun character like that was set up in Aquaman, you know, even, I mean, Jason Momoa, he's kind of a happy-go-lucky guy.
Yeah.
So, but everyone in this movie is just like brooding the entire time.
Yeah.
But he was one of those characters. You kind of make sense. Like,
yeah, like I think he has more of a reason to brood than most.
Yeah, and so I just love the way his character arc played out. So I know we're excited to talk about Barry Allen, the Flash.
Yeah.
I fucking loved Barry in this movie, at least in this cut, more so than the last one. Like, I appreciated what they did with him. I missed the Blackpink playing in his makeshift apartment.
Oh yeah. In the original theatrical cut, he goes into his little like weird warehouse house, and Blackpink is playing in the background. Makes no sense.
There are a couple of Whedon jokes that I actually kind of miss. That was one of them, like the gags. I still booed at the Bruce Wayne "I'm rich" joke. I was surprised that was a Zack Snyder joke and not a Joss Whedon joke.
But I think I said it when it happened. I was like, when you take out all of the other cheesy, horrible jokes and you leave that one cheesy, horrible joke, it doesn't feel as bad.
Yeah, exactly.
As it did the first time.
I'm not going to lie. I did not miss the I hear you could talk to fish joke.
Yeah.
Anyway. Barry in this movie, I loved how much they differentiated him from other versions of Barry that we've seen mainly in the TV show. He was super funny in this. He was kind of charming. He was very naive, but
he's a little baby.
But ultimately, he's like super brave, and it's really cool to see.
In the original theatrical cut, there were like multiple times where he's like, "I'm scared. I'm scared of bugs. I'm scared of hurting people. I'm scared of blah, blah, blah."
I love that they took that out. Like he really stepped up when he needed to. And you mentioned it before. I think my favorite scene in the entire movie was when he taps into the Speed Force and reverses time. Yeah. It was kind of gross seeing the other Justice League get formed back together. But before we get into that, I love when because he's injured and he's I guess very sensitive to pain, because before he barely got nicked and was like screaming.
Yeah, that happened twice where he like got a cut. Yeah. And then was like, ow.
That second one was a little more brutal.
That looked bad. But also, something I didn't know, he can heal fast. Yeah. No clue. So then it makes that first one where he just had like a scratch.
And he had to be like limped over.
He was like, shut up. But then one of the things that I like in my head, I had to be like, okay, you have to remember, like, he's very fast. He probably does not get hurt very often. Yeah. Because he can like avoid it. So I think it's just maybe he's not used to it.
So the Speed Force, something I loved about it was that first, the effects looked amazing. Yeah. Just seeing, I loved like seeing the blue lightning.
His weird run. Like, he has a very specific way of running.
I love that. I really want to know what that's inspired by. I think it's like, it looks like a relay runner.
I assume they took like videos of professional like speed runners. Yeah. Not even just like long distance cross country, but like speed runners, and slowed it down to see what it looked like. Yeah. And it probably looked similar.
I'm very interested in seeing what that was inspired by, and what it's modeled after. But first, it looks cool seeing like the ground form around him. Yeah. And just when he starts talking like to his dad, and he's like, "Dad, if you can hear this, like, I want you to know your boy was one of the best of the best." Oh, I love that.
I thought that was cheesy.
Really? I loved it. I don't know why. It just, I don't know. I really, really love that moment. Because we saw that, and in that whole like final battle, like the Speed Force scene was my favorite. Mm-hmm. But I hated in the theatrical cut the like Superman and Barry are racing to save all the citizens, and we have to save this one family that we've seen throughout the entire movie.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot more sense to have it be a completely...
That he's like charging up the like...
Yeah, and also that there's nobody there. Yeah. It makes a lot more sense. And you don't have to worry about saving people.
Well, that's... Now, I'm not going to dwell on this too much, because this is like a deep dive into like what I dislike about superhero movies, but particularly Zack Snyder superhero movies. I am tired of seeing destruction with no repercussion. Yeah. So like at least in Marvel, they have addressed that.
It's like story.
It's a story point that's continuing to go on. Yeah. So So I'm glad that there was at least a city that was destitute. No one was there, and they don't have to worry. Like you said, they don't have to worry about, hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars and people dying.
I was gonna say people, but yeah, money too.
Well, I'm just saying, like, because
wow,
that's taxpayer money that we're fixing these.
You know what? You've got a point.
Yeah.
Because they're not gonna build Bruce Wayne.
No, and
they wouldn't know.
Like even in Spider-Man: Homecoming, that was the whole thing. They're like, oh, the people who made this mess are getting paid to clean it up.
Yeah.
So like at least they address it in those movies.
Yeah.
To make sense within the story. Anyway, so yes, I'm glad that it was a destitute city. But yeah, love Barry Allen in this. Let's talk a little bit about Superman.
Sure.
We mentioned that we didn't see any CGI mustache. Thank God.
Thank God.
We did see a black suit, which was cool.
Okay, another thing that I think, again, you have to be either a big fan enough to research it or a comic book reader. Because when I saw that suit, I was like, the fuck is that? My first thought was that Batman made him, well, I guess Alfred, made him a suit. Like, maybe his old suit was gone in storage, buried. I don't know. So I was like, oh, is this like a Batman creation suit, and that's why it's all black? Like, I didn't understand and still do not understand how he had an all black suit.
Well, the only thing I can think of is that I know it looked very similar to Zod's costume or Zod's outfit from Man of Steel. But I'm like, yeah, I was still like, it looks cool, but it's just,
yeah, it looked cool. I don't hate the design of it. I don't mind like black on black on black.
Yeah.
But it just made no sense and wasn't explained. So
I like the suit for what it means of him like coming back from the dead.
Yeah.
I hated that he was still wearing it by the end of the movie, like when he like did his thing, because I'm like, Superman is. People can like or dislike Superman as a character if they want, but Superman at his essence, at his core, is not that type of character, and I think that's what people get upset about with these movies. Is that he is literally meant to be a symbol of hope, a symbol of good in the world. So, I mean, even the American-inspired colors, are kind of meant to, like, reflect that. So I just don't understand you mentioned that in Man of Steel, like, on my planet, this symbol means hope. But you put him in the bleakest circumstances in the world.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I think it would have made the only time I could understand a black Superman suit, besides my headcanon of Bruce Wayne made it for him or had it made for him, is like if he was bad.
Yeah.
I would assume a bad Superman wore a black suit. But we had already gone through this whole thing where he was like freaking out, and then he was like, oh, I remember everything. Which is another thing. He saw Lois Lane and was like, okay, like just it's all here now.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's the power of love or whatever, which is
that was a joke in the movie too.
Lame. Yeah. But but I don't know, it's just I think, did they expand the fight scene of bad Superman fighting the rest of the Justice League? I think they did.
They did a little bit, but it was mostly they used the original footage because the interaction between he and Batman was completely different.
Yeah.
They took out that stupid like British accent Superman. I don't know. I still think he sounded like he had a British accent.
Okay, I remember you bringing this up once before. It wasn't a British accent.
Do you bleed?
Do you bleed?
So yeah, he was straight up trying to kill Batman in this one.
Yeah. But I don't know, even then it's like it wasn't very long of him being like out of it, which I mean, again, probably makes more sense for the story that they're telling. They're not telling a bad Superman story. But I don't know, it just felt very abruptly over.
Yeah.
And then he was completely fine.
Yeah, and then the various like visions, and we'll get to the nightmare scene in just a little bit. But I don't know, Zack Snyder is like obsessed with like a bad Superman, which I'm like,
I can understand that it would be interesting.
Yeah, but we had one movie of him being good.
Yeah. Give him a chance.
That was the thing. Even in Batman vs. Superman, he was fighting another hero.
Yeah. And also, a bad Superman would destroy the Earth. Superman is way, way, way OP. That's why you can only put him in the last 5 minutes of a fight scene.
Yeah, that's what I put. He's still overpowered as hell in this movie. There's just, you can't really fix that. unless it's in a Batman vs Superman where you knock him out with kryptonite. Like he's just OP.
He's going to be OP. That's
he made
his
quick work of Steppenwolf when he got there.
Yeah.
I loved and hated the whole not impressed.
Yeah,
like that felt very Superman. Like he's kind of cheesy as a character anyway. But just like so that just feels more like not impressed guy.
Yeah.
My last note on Superman is just Henry Cavill. Like,
oh baby, you don't gotta tell me twice.
I'm upset that if this is the last time we see him as Superman, I mean, at least we got this version instead of we can always revisit as opposed to the theatrical cut. But it's just like he's such an embodiment of Superman, and it's such a shame.
Just a guy from Kentucky.
Just the guy from Kentucky. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something we mentioned. We were like, no offense. What a waste of such a talent. Every time I see any clip of Henry Cavill in anything, I always want to rewatch Witcher. Yeah. And I might. Have y'all seen it? It's fantastic. You should watch it. It's on Netflix.
But yeah, it's just Man of Steel I like the idea of putting him in a circumstance in which like he doesn't understand his powers and even that like brutal choice he has to make of killing Zod, like even though it's very un-Superman of him, it's still like I'm okay with it because it's like you can see that it had like an impact on him. He didn't want to do that. Yeah. But yeah, it's just what a waste of a great Superman. I hope
a very great, very handsome man.
Yeah, I hope we get to see him again, but they're so wishy-washy on like is he or isn't he. I think he's out, especially now that they're working on a Superman reboot. And at last I heard there were talks of having a black actor play Superman. Yeah. So which I'm excited for too. I'm excited to see a new take on it.
If it's gonna be anything other than Henry Cavill, I'm glad that it'll be something new. Yeah. I would have liked to see Henry Cavill in. Sorry if you guys can hear that truck outside. In why do I want to say Zoom? That's not right.
Shazam.
Zoom, for all those who don't know, was like a Y2K era science educational program on like PBS. I don't know why that came in my head.
I thought you were talking about Zoom on like.
Oh no.
Like work Zoom.
No, old Zoom. But I would have loved to see him be funny in something because he's funny.
Yeah, he is very funny.
Another 1%.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're wrapping up here on Justice League. We just have a couple more things we want to talk about. Mm-hmm. So the nightmare scene. Yes. So is this a dream? Is it a glimpse into an alternate timeline? Is it the future? We don't know.
Yeah, when I first saw it, well, it was kind of that thing, if I remember correctly, where it was like, it was just kind of presented to us, and then he woke up at the end, and we were like, oh, it was a dream. Yeah. But it's something that he's been revisiting, right? Because didn't he have like a nightmare dream in Batman versus Superman?
Yeah, so that's the first time we saw it, and then like he woke up from his dream within a dream, and that's when he saw Barry in his like computer system, and he was like, Lois Lane is the key. You got to stop him. But then we just never revisit that until this, which would make the most sense.
Was there a nightmare scene in the original Justice League?
No.
Okay, so the one that I'm thinking of must be Batman versus Superman. So because I didn't even remember it was in Batman versus Superman.
Yeah. So we had the scene there, and maybe both Batman versus Superman Ultimate Edition and Zack Snyder's Justice League fall into the Age of Ultron like trap. It's like we were trying to set up so many different things that like where Zack Snyder's Justice League has the benefit of having 4 hours to tell a movie, so they can go to these different setups, and it for the most part makes sense. But like this scene again just kind of comes out of nowhere, and it feels real. It feels like it's something that's being led up to. It's just never specified as whether it's a premonition or if it's just a dream.
And maybe that's intentional.
Well, that's the thing, is that Zack Snyder has said that the nightmare scene would have been like one of the two following movies, like living in that world. So like,
which again we're not gonna have.
Yeah, and in this, Well, they mentioned a little bit what I think it could have been, but before we get to that moment, this was a moment in the movie where I thought there was some of that weird CGI, specifically with Flash and Cyborg. Flash had this weird like CG beard going on.
Yeah, we need to do a prosthetic beard.
Put a fake beard on him. Do something.
That will look 10 times more convincing than, and it was so bad I didn't know who it was at first.
He looked completely different.
He looked completely different. He was in a different costume. It was like a mechanical suit. But yeah, I didn't realize who that was supposed to be until you mentioned it. Yeah. I had no idea.
Also, if they're going to like fight Superman, like why wouldn't he, you don't think Bruce Wayne had another one of those like Superman fighting suits laying around the old Batcave that he had from BVS? He made a whole suit to fight Superman.
Oh.
Remember
like
in BVS?
Like a Hulk Buster.
Yeah. Gotcha. Like, you don't think he had one of those laying around?
Or make another one. Well, it kind of looked like maybe he didn't have access to all the stuff he had access to previously.
That was some of the weird CGI there. Also, that weird shot of Superman landing. I was like, was that like digitally inserted? Because
stretched.
Yeah, he looked very widescreen in this not widescreen shot.
Yeah.
But so the moment everyone wants to talk about in the nightmare scene was we get one visit from the Joker.
Yeah. The Joker.
The Joker.
I don't know why I said it like that.
I mean, we also saw Queen Mira. Queen? She's not a queen. We saw Mira and her random British accent.
Yeah. So here's as someone who has a very shaky understanding of everything that's ever happened in the DCEU, I'm thinking these people have never met.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he's met Mira. I don't think he's met Deathstroke.
He has, but
has he?
Just not in the movies. Actually,
so no,
not in the movies.
So no.
Well, not in the movies that we saw, but I think again, and this is the problem with the DCEU is that unless you read the comics, if you read the comics, you would know that Deathstroke has been a Batman villain for years. So they would have known each other.
Okay, but that's not relevant in the context of the movies, which is what I'm going off of.
But he's been Batman for 20 years in the movies.
Okay.
So you don't think he's we didn't see him talk to the Joker before this, but we know that they knew each other.
But we've seen this Joker before.
Yeah, but yeah, I get what you're saying, though, that they haven't met. So
we haven't seen them meet, so I'm going to assume they haven't. We haven't heard when Lex Luthor tells Deathstroke, like, oh, I want you to kill Bruce Wayne. Well, the Batman. Yeah. His name's Bruce Wayne. He's like, well, in that case. So I assumed he knew of him. But we had nothing to tell us that they'd even seen each other. Same thing with Mira. Mira?
Mira. I would say Mira.
And then for them to just be there was so confusing. Yeah. It's like, what a ragtag team.
But
and then another thing that pissed me off. If no one had mentioned that the Joker was going to be in this, it would have been so cool to see him there. The way it was shot, it was like going to be this huge reveal, except there was no reveal because we already knew. Like, what an undercut. That's so frustrating. Frustrating.
Yeah.
I don't know. So that was like my main. And then, like you were saying, I didn't really understand what context we were watching it in. I assumed, I don't know, because I'm in very much of a Marvel, like, coming out of WandaVision brain. So I'm like, this is an alternate universe. But it could, I guess, just be a nightmare. But it felt like an alternate universe.
Yeah. So first off, I will say, I personally thoroughly enjoyed seeing Batman and Joker have this discourse. I love the Batman Joker moment just because we've not gotten that in the entire DCEU because we haven't had a Batman movie. Mm-hmm. Batman vs Superman, but I don't count that as a solo Batman movie. We got a little more context behind what happened with Robin, which again, it's pretty well known in pop culture, but if you didn't know,
that's one of those things where I'm like, I'm okay with not being shown this happening because everyone knows about Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
So it's like that's one of the ones where I'm like, okay, I'll let you have that one.
and we also get our cursing bad boy Batman.
Yeah.
I didn't mind him cursing. I mean, even if it was a little forced,
I think it made sense.
But yeah, especially when he's talking to the Joker and he's like,
Yeah.
and believe me, I will fucking kill you. I don't know. It worked for me.
I guess it kind of goes against Batman's like code. Doesn't Batman not kill people?
He does. Yeah, exactly.
Well,
he doesn't kill people. Joker's not a people. Joker's a monster.
Oh my God.
No.
But that's something that they haven't been following.
But
anyway.
they've kind of. I like that they play. He's like, Joker was like, "Oh, you're not gonna kill me. I'm your best friend." The reach around line was a little weird.
That was weird.
But
I mean, it's a Joker. He's fucking weird.
He's weird himself.
And I will say that I preferred this version of what's this guy's name again?
The Joker?
No.
Jared Leto?
The actor. Yeah. Jared Leto. I like this take on Jared Leto specifically's Joker than I did the Suicide Squad, like cool rich guy Joker.
So here's my thing. When I saw just the picture of the Joker, I, coming off of like all these previous iterations, I wasn't initially against
Which one?
the Suicide Squad. I'm sorry.
Okay.
In Suicide Squad, I was like, you know what? Maybe.
How many ways can you spin the Joker?
So that's
you know
what I was like.
mean?
I was like, maybe.
Yeah.
The movie itself was not good. So like,
But like, and also his whole thing.
It just So this version of the Joker. This version of the Joker was, even in his 3 minutes that he was on screen, was so much better. And yeah, it really gave me those like Killing Joke, like, or even Dark Knight, like we're two of a kind, like we're gonna be doing this for the rest of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I really liked it. So we already chatted about, like, did this movie need to be 4 hours? No. Would it have worked better as a series? In my opinion, yes. The last thing I want to talk about, I know Kendra's been dying to sink her teeth into. We got introduced to one Martian Manhunter.
Unnecessarily. No reason. So here's my thing. I'm mad. Sorry. No. Here's my thing. Completely unnecessary. Didn't need to be there. It took away all of the emotional weight of a scene between Lois Lane and Martha Kent. Just because it was such a touching scene, only to be like, oh, that wasn't her. Third of all, I don't know why you would do Martian Manhunter, who I don't know anything about besides he has a stupid name, both his real name, like his human name, and his like superhero code name, both very stupid. And I know that he can shapeshift, and I assume he can like pull memories. How else would he know so much about Lois Lane and Martha Kent? Like, unless he could, I don't know. That's all I know. Again, never read the comics, so I don't have any, and I'm going off of just watching the movies. Why would you do this when Marvel's already doing Skrulls, which is like the same thing? They look similar. They're both like green alien looking fucks who can shapeshift. Why would you do it? Like, I don't understand if it doesn't add anything. And you told me, oh, well, Martian Manhunter is part of the Justice League, like in the comics. That's cool. I don't care. Because he doesn't need to be there. Not everyone who's part of it needs to be there. Marvel didn't put all of the Avengers in the Avengers movies. At least not yet. If they do, it's going to be down the line. You don't have to put this character that makes no sense being there. And another thing that you told me was that this actor has played this like military guy in like 2 other movies. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, so like this was someone that they've introduced before. Like Martian Manhunter has been there the whole time. Not necessarily. It's like someone they retconned as Martian Manhunter.
Yeah, I think that's my biggest issue is that they never set it up. Like, had he been like Sergeant John Jones, that would have made more sense.
Sergeant Jones,
and we don't know his first name.
Spelled correctly. No Z's.
But no. So the actor Harry Lennox, who was in Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman as, let me look at his character's name, Calvin Swanwick.
Not even close.
Yeah, was I don't, here's the thing. I don't know if perhaps that was in the plans all along, which if it was, okay. But like
it up.
The execution between A, B, getting to C was non-existent.
Yeah.
Like there was no attempt other than just saying like, just showing us, oh, he's actually Martian Manhunter. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I hated the reveal with Martha Kent, when he shapeshifted out of Martha into Manhunter form and then back into Calvin form. Because now I'm like, is he just shapeshifting as Calvin Swanwick? Like, is that just someone he's...
I assumed.
Or is that his identity in this? Because they never showed him as John Jones.
Yeah, they didn't really... Well, again, because this was just kind of thrown in, they didn't really set the ground rules. So I don't even... Like,
and I mean... Yeah.
I know from Captain Marvel, where the Skrulls were introduced, I know that they can only shapeshift as people they see.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know what the rules are for him, because it was never explained.
And I like Martian Manhunter as a character. I think he's cool. He has cool powers and shit. He shapeshifts. He's very strong. He can fly.
Hell
cool.
Yeah. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
And like there's plenty of the animated stuff that's like, really showcases like how cool he is. But in this, it felt so shoehorned in.
Yeah.
And then what blows my mind is with no explanation and no resolve other than just like, oh, well, it's good to see you. You're telling me this motherfucker has been here the entire time?
Yeah.
In Man of Steel, you don't think that would have been a good time for Superman to get some help? Superman was fighting a squadron of fucking Kryptonians by himself.
It's not the time to reveal myself.
Like, you don't think that was people were dying in Metropolis, in Gotham, all over the world?
It's not my place to reveal myself just yet. I have to wait to also not help at all.
Yeah.
In the Justice League
I have to
movie.
wait until you guys have been completely... You guys have beaten Steppenwolf.
It's over and done. And then I show up at your fucking house that I know where it is for some reason.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, I want to join the team. Oh, by the way, my name is Martian Manhunter.
Yeah.
Get out of my house.
I think this was one cameo and one reveal that the team, the director was like,
fumbled.
I think people are just going to be excited to see him. I was so annoyed. Like,
that's so annoying. Because again, for people who love that character, what a shitty way to introduce them.
Yeah. Again, I think he's a cool character.
Yeah.
I loved him in the Justice League cartoon. I love him in the various DC animated movies. Yeah, I loved seeing the Green Lantern stuff. I enjoyed, I should say, some of the like pepperings of the Injustice like vibes throughout the movie. But that was just one that I was like, oh my God, this is weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I know we had a lot of thoughts. I think just because this movie is out doesn't mean that it's free of criticism. Just because it's far better than its predecessor doesn't mean it's free of criticism. I think we're allowed to have this sort of discourse about it. That's what movies are about. So even though we had plenty of thoughts and feelings about certain aspects of the movies and what led up to it, I still enjoyed it. There are probably scenes and moments I will still probably go back and revisit. I don't know that I'd watch the whole thing again.
If I watched it again, I would watch it in 6 parts.
Yeah.
Instead of all at once.
Yeah, because that's just a lot to take in.
Yeah.
It doesn't fix the DCEU as a whole. Like I said, it's non-canon. It's just kind of its own little thing now. And I definitely think it's a stronger entry for Zack Snyder. I highly, highly doubt we're going to see anything more from this vision going forward. But I mean,
maybe one day. You never know.
I never thought we'd get this version. So
yeah, it's true. Yeah, my finishing thoughts. I liked it. Again, I didn't hate the first one. I like this one a lot better. I love the expansion of specifically Cyborg and the Flash that we got. I think that was necessary, especially for the Flash, which he's gonna get his own thing, which is good, but it's nice to have like a little bit more of an introduction before we get into his own separate movie, because now I can understand like all of his powers and stuff like that. Like I didn't know he could like fuck people up, I kind of suspected because of Quicksilver in WandaVision, but Quicksilver.
Well, he can like, and I'm excited to see what they'll do. But I mean, we've seen him like fuck with time.
Yeah.
But he can also like generate like lightning power, like bolts, and like use those as as powers.
Well,
he can like create like wind tunnels and shit. So like
it's interesting for sure. And but yeah, I still think that for getting a second chance, for getting an extra 2 hours of runtime or whatever, it was still confusing in places, gratuitous in a lot of places, and I don't know. I don't know if I feel any better about Zack Snyder as a filmmaker than before.
Yeah.
If anything, it just the amount of stuff that he's like gone on to say makes it like it makes me enjoy the movie less when he talks about like, oh, well, I would have done this, this, and this. Well, I wanted to do this, and the studio wouldn't let me do this, this, and this. Like, he wanted to put everything in the world in this movie, and it's like, it's just not realistic.
I remember saying when I did a review of the black and white trailer that, last year, no one dampens my excitement for the Snyder Cut more than Zack Snyder himself. Mm-hmm. Just because part of it was just I wanted to see it. Like, I want to see what this thing is, and I'm glad I have it now. I can watch it. But yeah, it's just he does a lot of talking. He's done a lot of talking before the movie. He's done a lot of talking after the movie, and it's no reflection on what he experienced while making the original, and we're very sensitive to that. And so because of the tumultuous time he went through while making this movie, I'm glad he got to revisit it. I'm glad he got to finish it through. Yeah. And I'm ultimately happy for my fellow superhero fans. The people who have been dying to see this movie will love this movie. Yeah. It is everything that people who enjoy the Zack Snyder DC stuff have come to enjoy. And I'm glad they have it now. Yeah. I'm not clamoring for a Snyderverse of the DCEU. Yeah. But at least this was a very interesting thing that we have officially gotten.
It's like a cultural reset almost. Like, how often does this happen?
The only thing I can think of is the re-pieced together Richard Donner cut of Superman 2 from like the late 70s, early 80s.
Interesting. How long after that came out did it get redone?
It was a while.
Yeah.
It was a long time.
Wasn't, 3 years?
4 years, yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting, the story behind this whole saga of the Justice League.
I'd love to see a documentary on it.
I would love to see a documentary.
Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up. And also, you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch. All right, see you next time.